Time now to welcome in legendary sports broadcaster Brent Musburger, the man who started it all here on My Guys in the Desert. Brent, thanks for coming on. How are we doing today?
Hey, Stormy, I'm doing great. How'd you and your father make out over the weekend? What was your score at the circuit?
Oh, Brent, why'd you have to do this to me? It didn't go well. It didn't go well. We had too many of those short favorites that we liked in the NFC West, and it bit us in the butt, Brent.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do well either. I went 2-3, so for the year, I'm at even 500. So
Okay.
That's not going to cut it. I can't believe they got about 100 people over there that went 10-0 the first 2 weeks.
I know.
Whatever they're drinking, I can't believe it.
It can't last, Brent. We're on the up and up. I can feel it. From 500, we're just going to keep soaring. But listen, of course, we're going to talk Raiders with you in just a little bit. But I first want to get your reaction to the Monday Night Football game. How much did the results of the Packers, and particularly Aaron Rodgers, mirror what you expected to see in this bounce-back spot?
You know, it's funny. They were tale of two halves. You know, at the intermission, I thought, wow, maybe this Lion coaching staff knows what it's doing. And then Packers came out and, of course, scored on their first three possessions of the second half, and it was basically game, set, and match. I think the difference, Stormy, for me was that they discovered Jones and they kept going in his direction throughout the night. Now, we knew that Aaron Rodgers was not as bad as he played in week one. We also know he does not have a good one-loss record in Florida. Heat and humidity in that Jacksonville game, and they were certainly a no-show. And Jameis Winston put on a performance for the ages, and then he reverted to the mean here this week in game two for the Saints when they went into Charlotte and lost to Carolina. So I wasn't completely shocked. A little bit disappointed, I think, in the Lions and their performance in the second half. It was an interesting moment for bettors, however. If they had waded in originally on the Packers and took a look at that second half line, it's a good thing to go ahead and even if you took the Lions and the points, I think Dave Tooley pointed this out, and I know he's the king of the underdogs at VSIN. He had the Lions at 11.5, 12, whatever it was, when he bought in. But at the half, it was a short price on the Packers, and it was a good way to lay off and hope that you get a middle. I mean, there's always betting opportunities at halftime, if you know what I mean, Stormy.
Oh, of course I do. And I'm one of the biggest in-game bettors out there. I'm a big fan. You mentioned just the kind of disappointment for the Lions in this game. For them as a group, how tough is it to squander what was a 17-14 lead at half? On a lucky break there, Matt LaFleur giving them a warm-up kick. But to squander such a good start with getting blown out the way that they did in the second half.
Yeah, you know, the franchise has had so much trouble. I mean, I was a youngster when the Lions were actually winning championships. Doak Walker, Bobby Lane. I mean, that was the golden age of Detroit Lion football. And then when I started covering the Bears, we had Donnie Brooks, and of course on Thanksgiving it was always the Lions against the Packers, and it was great entertainment back in the day because the Lions could play a little bit. So they appear to be down at the bottom, probably one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL this year. And hopefully someday they'll get things turned around. And like the Raiders have. You mentioned the Raiders, and who knows? 2-0 is a pretty good start.
Yeah, let's turn our attention to the Raiders because, as you mentioned, 2-0 start. We were talking on the show last week about how the Raiders and Broncos were two of these teams kind of with a lot of unknowns that needed to prove themselves a little bit with the likes of Kansas City. They both win. KC loses a thriller late because their defense couldn't come through. What did those two teams in the AFC West show you?
Well, obviously, I'm much more aware of what's going on with the Raiders because I watch them in person every week. As far as the Broncos are concerned, I think we have to consider the fact that it was the Giants and the Jaguars they put down. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, okay, or put them down, but I do think as handicappers, we certainly have to weigh that. The Raiders' performance in winning Sunday in Pittsburgh told me a couple of things. First of all, I think it's the best win of John Gruden's second tenure as Raider head coach, simply because they were coming off an overtime game, an emotional game, had to travel 3 time zones to the east, were beaten up in the offensive line, and somehow they found a way to win that game. So I am. Let's sort out the fact that I'm with the Raiders. I would be, as strictly as a handicapper, more impressed with what the Raiders have done than what the Broncos have done going forward. We shall see. Now, suddenly nobody was on the Raider bandwagon to begin the season. I mean, nationally, they were put down from the draft to the coach to everybody. But now everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon, and I say slow the roll a little bit, okay? 2-0 is still 2-0. We got 16 more weeks to go. Everybody's going to play 17 games during that span. The Raiders' offensive line is still in shambles regarding injuries. Now Derek Carr is nursing that ankle injury. Josh Jacobs can't stay on the field. So everybody should just relax a little bit, and let's see what happens. But I'm not going to jump up and down and say that the Raiders suddenly are better than the Chiefs because the Raiders beat the Ravens and the Chiefs lose to them. The Chiefs basically lost because of a turnover, and that's something that coaches and handicappers can never program. And the young man put the ball on the ground, and Ravens recovered and go on to win the football game. Very dramatic fans game, but it also was a warning, and I sucked in on the 3.5. I had the Chiefs. Stay away from 3.5. Just stay away from it. You're not going to make money given 3.5. And I'm telling myself that as much as I'm telling any of your listeners or viewers to tell you the truth. But it's a trap number, 3.5.
Before we left off, we were talking about the Raiders, and I wanted to follow up on Derek Carr, who you mentioned is dealing with an ankle injury, had an MRI yesterday, and they're kind of figuring out the level of concern there. How do you feel about it? Because, Brent, he has been fantastic, particularly in the second half. 571 pass yards in the second half and later, most by any quarterback in 2 games since 1978.
Yeah, it's been a spectacular, Stormy. The key is that John Gruden's somewhat very complex system. It took Carr a while to become accustomed to it, but now he knows it as well as John does, and that allows him to audible to line of scrimmage. You have 3 choices on John's play calls when you come up to the line, and Derek now knows exactly what he's looking at, and he's not just thinking about the play because he already knows the plays that John's called. He's got those memorized. He's got the playbook down. I've always liked Derek Carr. I never thought he was a problem with this team. The media always wanted to push him out of town. It seemed to me after every game they lost, they wanted to blame Derek. We have to be a little bit concerned. That is the ankle that underwent surgery back in 2016. The last time the Raiders made the playoffs, and of course Derek could not play in the loss at Houston. But he's been tremendously efficient. He has a lot of faith in this young receiver corps suddenly, not just Darren Waller. But he went to Ruggs. Everybody remembers the 61-yarder for the touchdown in the fourth quarter that put the game away in Pittsburgh. But it looks like Edwards is going to step up. We already know that Hunter Renfrow is a good third-down receiver. There is a good camaraderie going on. Quarterbacks have to believe in receivers. When you watch Rodgers work, you know he's going to find Adams frequently in any game the Packers play. It's that relationship between receiver and quarterback. Carr's had it with Zay Jones. He hit Zay for the winner on the Monday night against the Ravens. So, and he's a wonderful, wonderful young man. He's all about the team, just a great leader inside the locker room. And I hope he's able to go because don't overlook the Miami Dolphins, folks. Brissett caused the Raiders a lot of trouble a couple of years ago in Indianapolis, and it looks like if Tua is not 100%, it looks to me like Brissett will get the call. And he's a bit of a dangerous two-way quarterback, certainly not as electric as Lamar Jackson, but he can run. He's a very good athlete. Grew up South Florida. I actually watched him play high school basketball. He was one of the best young basketball players down in South Florida. So even though the Raiders are favored against the Dolphins, and even though they owe the Dolphins one because last year was a very painful defeat, I hope that they don't get overconfident being 2-0 because the Dolphins have got, especially at defensive backfield, they've got some very good players.
Yep, Raiders favored by 3.5 at home, and the Dolphins, of course, coming off that blowout from the Bills. As you mentioned, I'm sure they're going to be a little bit angry about that and see what they can do here in Las Vegas. Michael Lombardi said yesterday, obviously it's way too early to get into this type of a thing, but he mentioned Derek Carr, if he were to be able to be healthy and he stays up at this type of production, being a name you could see in that potential MVP race. He sits at 25-1 right now on DraftKings. And Brent, a number of quarterbacks, though, not just Derek, were injured on Sunday. Tyrod Taylor, Carson Wentz, Big Ben, now we're finding out, the list goes on and on. Is there any one that really stands out to you that's going to have a big effect this week?
Certainly down in Houston. They're going to push a rookie in. Tyrod Taylor had made Houston very competitive in the first two games, and I think you may have an update on this. I thought I might have noticed that Taylor went on IR,
correct, yes,
which would eliminate him for 3 games with the Texans. So that to me is a major blow to that team. Tyrod Taylor, underrated, certainly not a Pro Bowl quarterback every year, but he makes you competitive, and he's done a very good job with the Texans. He had them in a position where they might have upset the Cleveland Browns even before he went out with that injury. So we'll have to see, Stormy, but I think that's going to have a heavy impact on Houston next week.
Yeah, he was something like 10 of 11 at the time, had a touchdown through the air and one on the ground, and it was that touchdown, the rushing touchdown, that ultimately hurt his hamstring. As you mentioned, Tyrod Taylor is on IR, so out for 3 weeks. Another one, though, we talked about it last week, the Andy Dalton and Justin Fields situation, and you mentioned that this could be an opportunity to ease Justin Fields in at this point in the season before you start having the heavy hitters that come on their schedule. Andy Dalton gets hurt, his availability still to be determined, but could this be an opportunity, if he gets to play on Sunday, to kind of grab the reins and potentially force Matt Nagy's hands, despite what we heard him say yesterday, though, that Andy Dalton is the starter if he's healthy?
Yeah, I would go with Justin.
Yep.
And see what I've got. In his time after he replaced Dalton, he struggled a little bit with the pro passing game. That's to be expected. But he's a good athlete, and he can bail himself out of trouble. And, he's a very good runner. I would certainly put him into that lineup, and I would use Dalton. Remember now, they still have Nick Foles as their third quarterback that they can put. If Dalton can't go and he's inactive, you've got the veteran Foles who can step in if Fields struggled. But I would give the rookie a chance and see what he's got. I mean, yes, the New York Jets got burned, and Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions in that game, and it's something he has to learn from going forward. And sometimes it's not easy for young quarterbacks. It's not easy for old quarterbacks in the NFL, although Tom Brady makes a liar out of me about every week. I mean, Mr. Brady, Stormy, it's unbelievable. He's got the game of the week. He's going out to play in SoFi Stadium against the Rams. Could well be a preview of the NFC Championship. These are 2 elite teams, and so everybody's going to be watching that. That's the second game of the Fox doubleheader on Sunday. And, the eyeballs that game is going to attract, that'll be something.
Well, that's what I was just thinking. Not only that game, but he's on the road the next 2 weeks in a row at the Rams and then at Foxborough. So he's going to have a lot of eyeballs for the next 2 weeks. And he actually said something interesting yesterday I wanted to ask you about, talking about the taunting penalties. He said that they're ruining the game. And through these first 2 weeks, there have been 11 taunting penalties called. That's as many as there were all of last year in the NFL. What are your feelings on the way that this has transpired in the NFL early?
Well, you watch it to go down, okay? They put an emphasis on it, Stormy, in the off season. I don't know who complained about it. Obviously, I just kind of shake my head. We actually, in the Steeler game, we had a offensive guard, Trey Turner, their best offensive lineman for the Steelers, was kicked out for spitting at one of our guys. And Trey's argument was that the Raider had spit at him first. Now, I don't know. Okay. But anyway, Turner got kicked out of the game. Taunting is just so difficult, I think, to legislate against on the field. I think you got to go in and knock it off, shut up and get up on the bench. I mean, if you're an official, I think just being a tough guy out there is a little bit better than throwing a flag and calling. But I expect that curve to come down now as the season progresses. People who are fans don't like penalties. And last year, I think we had an all-time low for holding penalties. And thank God about that. It made the games a lot more a lot more exciting. And generally, taunting is like those pushing calls. It's usually the second guy that gets it. The officials know that, but they've been told to emphasize taunting. I'm surprised, actually, that somebody didn't go over to the sideline and throw a flag at my favorite coach, John Gruden, over there, okay? I've listened to the tape this morning, and CBS obviously had a microphone very close to John. And, oh, yeah, baby. He got a little rough over there on the sideline. Fortunately, no official heard it.
Oh, it's so good. But yeah, I was curious your thoughts on it, just because I feel like you don't want to lose that element of emotion in players in the game either. And usually when you make an added emphasis on a call or you change a rule, it's because of a health and safety issue, or the fans are clamoring for it, or there's one standout instance that changes your perception of it. And I just didn't really feel like there was one of those for there to be such an emphatic placement on it this year.
Yeah, it's something. Well, you were around the National Hockey League a lot, okay? Let me tell you, there's some trash talking goes on down there, okay?
Oh my goodness,
but
I know.
You think Reeves didn't say something to a few of those guys before he pounded them into the corner?
Brent, I have one of the most interesting seats in the house last year with all of the games that they played at San Jose, obviously a huge rivalry between those two teams. Right. And because there were no fans for so much of the season, I sat behind the penalty box, and getting to hear the things that those guys say to each other back and forth without the fans in there. One of the coolest experiences I've ever had as a reporter. Thanks for doing this, Brent. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, Stormy. Okay, bye-bye.
We'll see you next week. Stay with us right here on My Guys in the Desert.